Hey folks, Ilse here. Um, I'm coming to you with Adelle King, a friend of mine and colleague who is a business coach for women entrepreneurs. And our aim today is to give you a shit ton of value about what it takes to grow your business in this time, in this industry, and get visible online. And so hopefully you're going to get lots of tidbits and hacks. Around that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have Adelle introduce herself in a slightly better way. And Adelle, maybe like tell us what you do, who you serve, how you came to do what you do and to help women entrepreneurs to essentially start and grow businesses.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I'm so happy that we're getting to connect and have this conversation today. And I also hope that it is super valuable for anyone who's watching it. I am Adelle King of Adelle King Business Coaching. I've been business coaching for about 1.5 years, but how I got into it was that sort of started out of a personal development journey and doing personal development work that I then wanted to facilitate and teach workshops, and found I was very good at the facilitating side, but not so much the business side. So I started working on the back end of other facilitators' businesses, doing online course creation and graphic design and hosting online workshops and classes for these facilitators and social media and all sorts of stuff on the back end of their businesses for almost 10 years until I got sort of burnt out doing that. And finally was like, I think I've learned enough about business over these 10 years, and I'd love to teach other people how to do the things rather than doing them myself. But not just on the technical side, also the strategy, also the personal development work. So I bring all of that together along with my background in teaching. I also taught preschool throughout that time on and off, and have a master's in education. So I bring all of that together in my business coaching, and now I help female entrepreneurs shine their light and turn their brilliance into a thriving business that they love, that lights them up. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, but I'm really just excited to see people get to share their gifts confidently. So
talk about being baptized in the fire. I bet you learned a lot, like being in the back end of all these entrepreneurs' business and having essentially doing things for them. I actually think that's pretty fascinating how now like you're like, why am I doing this for people when I could just teach other entrepreneurs now how to do it? And then you have that technical background, which I think is pretty fabulous, because I know for myself as a solo entrepreneur and working with other solo entrepreneurs, a lot of us do not have that entire comfort around tech and the back end of business. So I could see how your clients would really benefit from having that, your genius in that area.
First of all, I love that you call it soulful entrepreneurs. I think that's so beautiful. And yeah, and I think it's true, especially soulful entrepreneurs, heart-centered entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who really want to make a big impact, who care a lot. The tech side can be a big stumbling block, among other things, like just having the clarity or honing in on what exactly they want to be doing and who and how they want to help. So that's one piece. And I sort of in my start in business coaching and marketing, I was like, oh, let me do all of these master classes about the different tools and tech platforms. And but I also love getting into the strategy and the what and the who, and again, like what people are so just brilliant and talented in their area of genius. Because as much as I think it's important to know everything that you're doing in your business, to have an understanding of all the pieces, I also think it's really important to be able to focus on the things that are the most fun for you, that are the come most naturally, like, the things that you really want to be doing in your business. And knowing when to delegate things is super important.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of us that can get bogged down with all that back end stuff, like the website, the freebie, the like getting people's email, like all of that. But that's not automatically what's going to bring us clients. And so we can waste a lot of time and energy in that rather than actually being in the spot that's going to create the flow and the momentum in our business. From your perspective, what do you sense is like the biggest misconception in like the online business industry right now that's kind of leading entrepreneurs astray or holding entrepreneurs back?
Well, I think you just touched on it so perfectly. I call it bright shiny object syndrome, and I know I see it a lot, which is like coaches who think they need all of these things because they're not sure about the business side, because they're really good at what they do, whether it's healing or basically whatever they're doing, depending on their business. But then they're like, oh, I need to figure out how to build a funnel or learn about Facebook ads or, whatever it is. So they're taking all of these courses from all of these different coaches, trying to learn how this person did it, how that person did it, but not looking at themselves and their business and their talents and their abilities and what's going to work for them. And then getting overwhelmed and frustrated and stuck. And I'm just like, it doesn't have to be that way. So, bright, shiny object syndrome. I think that's really sort of run rampant. And I see so many people just course after course after course trying to use that to ease their insecurities or fill in the gap of what's not working, but just taking a step back and actually looking at, okay, what makes sense for me and my business and my clientele, I think is such an important step that people sometimes miss.
I've been there. I've definitely been there, the
Me too.
shiny, the jumping around. And then you end up with kind of like a piecemeal business where nothing quite like flows and fits together. So you got all these pieces. Yeah, I can see how that, and I think that's part of the industry too, is like everybody's telling you that their thing is the thing you need. And there's a lot of us who end up starting in business without having the right foundation in terms of messaging, clarity, the right offer, like all that, which is kind of, I think, what you do, right? Like in your program, you definitely focus on like, these are the actual things.
That's literally like what my program is. That's where it was inspired out of, was watching this bright shiny object syndrome. And I was like, all right, well, what are the steps? Because I heard that so much. Like, I don't even know where to start. I'm so overwhelmed. I feel so lost. Like I have that's how I felt right before I created this program. I was like, I have all the tools in the toolbox and I can't figure out what I'm doing. Like I've taken all the trainings under the sun and I'm still so lost and confused. And so I took a step back and was like, all right, what are the steps? What do I need to do in what order? And just organized it and simplified it and streamlined it while still making it fully customizable, because you need a niche and you need a marketing message and you need to have an offer. But just because so-and-so did it this way doesn't mean that's the right way for you and your business, right? And it may be, but you need to know first, like, what is the marketing method that you want to be using? Or, who is my audience and where do I find them? How do I connect with them before you start like chasing the programs? Then go take the program that's specific to what you need to learn, but get clear first. And I think the clarity is so important. So I created this beautiful step-by-step system and program. I call it the Money Maximizer system, because it's designed to just cut through that overwhelm. Thank you.
Like you're literally describing my story. Like this is actually one of the stories I tell people of like following somebody else's strategy and first investing a shit ton of money, like following this other person's strategy. It didn't feel like me. It didn't feel right. I was doing all the thing, getting absolutely no results. And at some point, in the funny story around that was, this was a time where I told my husband at the time, if this is it, this is the program that will make it happen. If I can't make this work, I will be done with my business and I'll just go back and get a job. I'll go back and work for the county or the state or whatever it may be. And like, I remember being like, holy shit, I've invested all this money. I'm doing all the work. I'm getting no result. And if I can't make this work, I literally promised my husband, I'm going to be done with this. And there was something about like that where I was like, fuck it, it's not working anyways. So I might as well just do me, and
Mm,
really started checking in as to like what feels fun, what feels right, what's the next step, and literally like tripled my business in like 3 or 4 months after doing that. And so
yeah,
like that concept of really finding like what is really going to light you up, what is really in alignment with your own rhythm, your own energy, so that you can differentiate yourself and you can disrupt the status quo a little bit and become seen. Yeah.
yeah. That just gave me chills. And I love that you got there, like that trust of yourself, because that has been one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've gotten from the women who've gone through my program is the self-trust that they're building, that willingness to follow their own intuition, which, isn't in business. They're always like, well, what's the benefit? And I'm like, it's not the sexy numbers benefits that everybody's throwing around on Facebook of, but it's so important. It's so important cutting through the noise.
Yeah.
And so much of what trips people up in business. So yeah, it breaks my heart when people are like, I've invested so much money, and I'm like, oh my god, So it's really easy to get caught in that like next thing, next thing, next thing, another training. It's yeah, it's a
and
slippery.
and and I think this is one of the shit show of the business coaching right now, is throwing these 10K months, 100K months, 6 figure this, 7 figure that. And the truth is, like, these programs don't actually really work for a lot of people. Like, for a lot of people, where you're following somebody else's, like signature process that work for them, it's going to work for 5% of the people who get in there. And then the rest of us are going to be left with a bunch of debt and having our confidence siphoned because we couldn't make it work. When in fact, the reason we couldn't make it work is because it wasn't ours. It wasn't our way. So, like, having that foundation and finding our way, like, the success is inevitable in some ways when you do it that way. Like, yeah, it might take a little tweaking, but at some point, like, not only do you make it, but you actually end up loving it once you make it. Because that's the other thing. Like, you can be successful doing somebody else's system, but then, like, that's where I work. Like, the amount of women who come to me and say, yeah, I have the money, but I hate my life and I'm burned out and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know how to receive. Like,
Mm,
that's not the point of this in the end.
yeah, it's so important. I say like fun is sustainable, right? It has to be something enjoyable for you
Yep.
if you're gonna make it last for the long run. And you don't get into business if you're not trying to like be successful for the long term. And it's so much about like, I was listening to a book today, and he says, oh my god, my brain just blanked. That you want your business to support your lifestyle, and I just think
Not
that
the other
that's
way
so
around. Yeah.
great. Yeah. So thinking about that and envisioning that to start with, I think is so important. And dream big. Go for the big picture, and it may take time to get there, but dream big. Have that vision, and
Yeah, and
then
I think so many of us forget that. Like, we start businesses with that idea, like we start a business for freedom, for abundance, for doing what we love, and then we get caught up in the grind of it. And then suddenly we're looking back and we're like, this isn't why I went into business. Like, there's this joke that entrepreneurs are the only people who will work 80-hour weeks for half the salary they were making in corporate. So, like, literally, like, having those values at the foundation of our business is so important, so that we don't lose our way. They're like our compass.
And I think it's sort of the same underlying thing, right? We get caught in the idea of like, so and so says this, or this is how we think it should be, rather than like, no, like I'm building my business for this lifestyle. So if I'm building my business for this lifestyle, build it that way now. Build it,
Yeah, the
start from
lifestyle is at the center.
there,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's the same thing about like, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Like, be living that way the whole way, working that way the whole way. Which isn't to say like there isn't hard work and there isn't time put in
Yep.
and there isn't boundaries and prioritization. Like all of that is important too. Um, and balance, having
Yeah.
it all be balanced. So
Yeah. If
yeah.
not, you might end up successful, but then you hate your life. So what's the point?
Go back to corporate.
Exactly. What do you feel is the biggest business accelerator? Like from your perspective, what makes the biggest difference because yes, I agree with you. It is about the journey, and we also want the destination. Like we also want to do all this work for a reason. Like, so from your experience of working with all these clients and from your own personal experience as an entrepreneur yourself, like what do you feel is the biggest accelerator in business growth and attracting clients?
Yeah. So this is the Badass Boss Business Accelerator, which is my program. Um, but yes, and I'm a little bit kidding, but also yeah. And clarity. I think clarity is so important. Whether it's clarity, like we were just talking about, the lifestyle that you want, the business that you're creating, who you like the clarity in all of the areas that are the foundational building blocks that make up the program that I've put together. And whether it's from the program that I've put together or not, there's still the fundamental building blocks. There's nothing super unique or special if you look at like what's inside the money maximizer system. Most people go like, yeah, I know that, that's obvious. And yet it's, if you're not succeeding in business, it's one of these building blocks. There's a lack of clarity in one of these areas. So I think clarity, in your vision, in your niche, in your marketing, in all the areas, I think clarity is just so important to moving forward. And it's sort of cliche, but it's like, if you're trying to get somewhere and you don't know where you're trying to get, then any path will do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do know, having that clarity will make it much easier and faster to get there, on figuring out the route and the steps to take. So I think clarity is so important.
I think too, like a lot of us who are purpose-driven entrepreneurs, like we feel like we can help so many people that like we're almost afraid of clarity because it feels like it's going to minimize us, or we're going to miss out, or we're going to leave people behind in some ways, and we don't want to do that. And I know for me, like that was part of it at some point, is getting really clear about really like, how am I different? Like what is really important to me? Who are the people I really want to work with and I can help the most? Doesn't mean I'm not going to help other people, but like focusing my offer, my message, in a very clear, intentional way made a big difference in my business.
And I think that's another misconception, especially with people who are multi-talented and multi-passionate and want and care so much and want to help so many people and want the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship and that vision that we were talking about.
Yeah, we want to do it all.
Is this fear of giving something up. And so there is a way to have clarity, to have it all without giving up any of it, but it takes a certain organization and prioritization. So I think that is a misconception, and I know that that's a really common fear,
Yep.
and I see that a lot also kind of stop people from, in those preliminary steps, in those first pieces that need to be in place. And there's a way. There is a way. I always say that to people when I start working with them and I see them go like, but is there? Are you gonna take something from me? And I'm like, no, just give it a chance. Like, I get it. I won't ask you to give up anything. We're just gonna reorganize it. And so yeah.
And I think we can do a lot of things in business while still having a pretty clear like focus and message. Like, the big thing is like a confused audience doesn't buy. So like being able to like behind the scenes, we can do everything we want that we feel is going to help our clients get to the results they want, and
Right.
while still being really really clear. But there's a level of trust here too, like level of trust that we can get there, a willingness, a commitment to figuring it out and figuring like what I call it the golden thread, like what's the golden thread in my work that I can focus on that's still going to allow me to do everything I want to do without confusing,
Yeah.
my message or my audience in some ways.
I think that's the perfect way of describing it. The golden thread is perfect. Yeah, that really is exactly what it is. Mm-hmm.
On this topic, right now the online space is quite busy, and I think it's been busy, right? With COVID, everybody going online, and then I think a lot of us, not only is it busy, but a lot of us have like screen fatigue in some ways, and all of that. Like, what are some of your recommendations right now for increasing visibility, for standing out online as an entrepreneur and getting recognized? Like, what are you seeing that you're recommending?
So so this is where I think again, that like just like what you said, the clarity about like who am I, what makes me different, what do I really care about, and really tuning into what that is and then turning it up, bringing that out in an authentic and genuine way. Because I think what's so important is that people connect to you, and that, just like you said, like building that trust, building that like trust factor, but really building relationships. I think that especially post COVID, I feel like people are so hungry for real connection. And so anything, anytime we're being authentic, being genuine, um sharing from our heart, especially for heart driven, soul driven, purpose driven entrepreneurs. I think that's so important, is really just being honest, being vulnerable. And that doesn't mean you have to share everything. That doesn't mean, but like in what you are sharing, in what you are bringing forward, just being really honest and genuine and transparent. I don't think smoke and mirrors work
Mhm.
so well, because people are smart.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
work a lot with the nervous system, and one of the things I will always tell people is nervous system calibrates to each other. It's almost like it's kind of what allows us to get a sense of the other person. So if somebody's not being genuine, if they're not being real, if they're putting on a face,
Yeah.
then it's like somebody else's nervous system contracts and they can feel it, which then
Mhm.
doesn't lead them to actually want to connect with you because something feels off. And that
Right.
was, it's not easy, but it was definitely one of the things, like, that's one of the things my own coaches worked with me. It's like, take the professional mask off, like, take the therapist mask off, like, who are you? Be you. And it's still something I'm
Yeah.
working on. Like, I'm really comfortable in that professional role and in that teacher, guide, mentor role. And like, I forget sometimes how to show up and just be a human, but it never fails. Like, when I show up as me, that's usually when I get clients.
Well, I think you're doing a
And
great job right now.
well, thank you. I think interviews are easy in that way. It's like you and I are just having a chat.
I think you're great at it. I think you've discovered a new secret talent.
Maybe I can just do interviews and that can be my marketing strategy.
There you go.
It's definitely a great way of bringing value and perspective to the table, for sure.
Well,
So,
you're a natural.
well, thank you. There's something I saw on your Facebook profile that I loved. So I work a lot around sabotage and burnout and overwhelm and around the nervous system and being set up to receive in radical ways. And I feel like so many entrepreneurs self sabotage or like play small, hide out, like just hold themselves out and back in some ways. Like, and you were talking about the 5 types of imposter syndrome in there. And you were describing, and I'm going to list those 5 just for you and for the audience. So you get it, you know what I'm talking about. But there was the expert, the superhero, the perfectionist, the soloist, and then the natural genius. And you were talking about each of these being like essentially aspect of imposter syndrome and self-sabotage. I'm wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about them and how you see them, how they show up, And then how do you work with your clients around like moving through that?
Sure. So I actually just discovered that there are 5 types of imposter syndrome myself.
Okay.
I did a quick Google search and it popped up as I was writing content about it. And I was like, wow. And I can tell you about it because I have experienced all 5 types at some point. So, you know, I know them intimately. But so yeah, so just to give sort of an idea, a better idea of what each one of those is. So the expert is that idea like I should know the answer to every question. I should already know everything. Like there's nothing that I can't say I don't know, or that's a great question. Let me get back to you. So it's that idea that we have to have the answer to everything all the time, that we should be an expert on all things. So that's the first type. The second one, the superhero, is, anyone who's a people pleaser, anyone who feels like they've got to maybe, have many roles and many hats that they have to wear and have to be everything for everyone all the time. Like
Yep.
super mom, super coach, super wife, like all the things. So, if you're working and building a business, like amazing at work and at your business, and just trying to be everyone to everything, and wearing thin and feeling like you're not showing up and not doing a good job in any of them. Again, I know that's a super big one for moms, the mom guilt and the work guilt. And I've definitely heard a lot. I'm not a mom, but I've heard a lot about that one. That particular version of the superhero, the perfectionist. This one I know really well. This is what we were just talking about, that mask of I have to play the role. I have to look the part. Before we hopped on this video, I had a background. Usually when I'm on Zooms, I have a polished background and it has my logo and it all looks very professional. And so for me, anytime I don't have my background up, I'm sort of like, I feel so exposed. So vulnerable. I'm like, it's a white background. It's pretty basic. The soloist is, if anybody who struggles to ask for help, who feels like I should be able to do it all on my own, I can do it all on my own. Asking for help is a sign of weakness or failure in some way. So going back to the perfectionist is like that you can't make a mistake. I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with what that one is, but so the soloist, doing it all on my own. And then the natural genius, I think this is the one that people least understand off the bat, is the idea like I should just naturally be good at things. And if it doesn't come naturally and easily to me right away, then I should just give it up. And I think this one in particular is more more with females than males, because males are more raised and taught like, you practice and you train and you get better at things over time. Whereas girls tend to be like praised for things that they either are or are not good at. You are smart, you're not smart. You are pretty, you're not pretty. It's not like you can work on that and get better. And so that idea, like if I don't get it in the first 5 seconds, then all hope is lost and I'll never be good at it. Or just that fear of, anyway. So
that's going to be an issue in business.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to know more about that, I did do a Facebook Live on it yesterday where I go through sort of strategies to counteract each of them. It's inside my Facebook group, so I'm happy to.
So I will I will post, I have the links to like your website, your program, and then I'll also put the link directly to your Facebook account if you want. This way somebody can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just click there and see the see the live over there. But yeah, like as you're talking, like I feel like I have all of those.
To some degree, that's the 6th type. I was like, type 6 is Adele, all of the above.
Yeah. What I've seen with the natural genius that's insidious is either you give up too quickly, or if something comes really easy to you, you don't dare charge well for it because it comes so easy to you. Almost feels like shameful, or there's some guilt around really making big money on something that comes so naturally to you, like you're exploiting people. And that's something like when I'm working, like a lot of my clients, you know, like essentially they learn how to make money doing what they're a genius at, like their natural genius, their natural brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
But then having to raise your rates, like there's so much around the nervous system about being able to raise your rates, receive massive amounts of money for something you're naturally good at, and not feel shame, not feel guilt around it. Yeah. Like, do you find that you're like, how much of your program and how much of what you do with working people is around pricing? Is that something that shows up or not particularly?
For sure. We definitely talk about that. And, there's each month is a different module. So when we get into the offer and building your offer and how to price it, we get into that. From a practical point of view, I have one person in the program who was working on her offer and her pricing, and she calls them gold coins. She's like, the gold coins just keep coming out, and I just said to her, like, make sure you include yourself in your pricing, and she was like, what? Like, because, and that goes back to that like lifestyle, like how do you want to live? You need to be able to afford that, and just including yourself in that, I think, is really important. So we do touch on that and we get into that,
including everything we've invested, you know,
yeah.
like everything we've invested to be the entrepreneurs or practitioners, the like the skill, our own support, like all of that needs to be taken into consideration for sure.
And not just like, oh, I'm spending an hour with my client face to face, but all the time that you're spending in the background, whether it's emails or
Yeah.
marketing, or like that's not the only hour that you're working in your business. So you have to have sort of a holistic view of, and there's a way to figure that out. And there's a very like math brain sort of logical way of figuring it out, and then there's the energetics and the sort of spiritual feel good side of it, and finding what matches and makes sense, and how to give all the value that that we want to just give and give and give, with in a way that's still honoring of you.
Yeah, it's like value-based pricing. Like it's not about you, it's about like the massive transformation your clients can have working with you. And it's also about your time and energy and your expertise and everything it's taken for you to be able to essentially like guide people through that. And then for me, the third part is having the like being in the right identity so that you can actually receive the worth of your work. And that was for me a big deal, coming from a social work and therapy background. Like I wanted to help everyone. I wanted to be affordable for everyone. And it took me a long time to be able to just like expand my own nervous system enough that I could actually receive more money and I could hold more money without a lot of that rub, and my nervous system could be expanded around money so that people on sales calls didn't think that what I was asking for was a lot of money. It was really interesting how it was more about me than anything tangible in the end, when it comes to money.
Yeah, that's often the case. But you have to heal the stuff on the inside first, and then everything else around you changes. It's important. It's so
Yeah, there's
important.
so much around money, so much
Yeah.
money trauma and money wounding. And
At any level, like no matter how much money you have or are making or don't have or are not making, there's always stuff. There's just
there's
money.
always a next level of being able to receive more, being able to be more visible, being able to hold more. We're always like, my own coach likes to say, it's not new level, new devil. It's new level, same devil. You're just working it at like a wider, deeper, more expanded level in some ways.
I saw somebody with a shirt today that as we were on the go, and I saw somebody with a shirt today that says, it doesn't get easier, you just get better. I was like, I love that.
That's absolutely true. So I'm actually going to jump because you brought up energy, and I have in my list of question, I have one of my question is, in terms of growing your business, attracting clients, like what are your thoughts on energy or inner, like the inner work versus strategy? Like, Is it 50-50? Is it 80-20? Like, is energy just BS? Like, where are you standing with that?
So I definitely don't think energy is BS. I've done a lot of healing energy work. I'm very intuitive and deal a lot in that. So I used to read tarot cards and things like that. So I've done a lot of, like lots of stuff in the spiritual realm and stuff like that. And healing work I've seen it transform so many people's lives. I've seen it transform my lives, my many lives that I've lived in this one lifetime. It's really powerful. My business coach is like, this is the real work, like, is doing the inner work. Because sort of like what we were just talking about in the work that you do of like expanding your receiving, that's really about the energy, our own energetics, your money mindset, your just that. I mean, that's like one small area, but there's so much stuff. And it runs us. And I mentioned that I used to teach preschool. I see like we're all just a bunch of grown up we're like little 4-year-olds in grown-up bodies, like running around, playing out our same 4-year-old mentalities and mindsets and hurts and things like that. So if we don't clear that out, we have basically a 4-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 12-year-old running our business in the background, and we don't realize. And there's a way of bringing that up, clearing it out, so that we can function and run our lives and our businesses far more efficiently and much better. And so I think it's really important. I think there's a lot of different avenues and approaches. There's a lot of different ways to get to the same ultimate outcome. But I think some form of inner work is really important. I think it's important to have clarity and to know the steps and to do the steps. But if you find yourself not doing the steps when you know what you need to be doing, that's the energy work. It's the energy work that keeps us from self-sabotaging, from being stuck, from not doing the things, from doing things in a way that doesn't work at all. Basically, if anything's not working, either you don't have the information or you have the information and you need to do the energy work. The energy work is probably, other than clarity, the energy work is the inner work, is probably the next biggest accelerator on how fast you're going to get through to your big vision.
Yeah, I mean, that tends to be like, if you're either not executing, like, you know what to do, but you can't bring yourself to do it, you're hiding in some ways, like, that's inner work. Or if you're doing all the stuff and you're not getting the results, like, yes, there might be a few tweaks here and there in your messaging or something like that, and that can be like simple, like pretty clearly and quickly looked at. But if the identity, who is, I like to use the metaphor of, like a race car driver. If you can have a really sound strategy, a really great vehicle, if you put a 4-year-old, a wounded 4-year-old who's afraid behind the wheel, you're going nowhere good. So if you're doing all the things, but you're not receiving the results, and usually your nervous system is contracted, or there's something in you that says it's not safe to receive. And that's all inner work. The other thing I would say too about that, like something that I noticed for me, is as I expanded myself, my business changed. So our business is an extension of who we are. So if we are in a place of contraction or we're small, then the choices we're making, the decisions we're making, the potential we're seeing tends to be in alignment with our own energy and with our own, like, we're calibrated, our business is calibrated to us. So the bigger we get, like, not only the bigger the results, but also the bigger, like, in terms of what we're able to manifest and create in business. And then suddenly it's like, oh, like, I thought I just wanted to do this, but now I'm doing all of this, like, and now I'm getting seen, and now I'm doing this. Like, all of that is obviously, as you can tell,
like all day. Yeah, like, this is such a big topic. This by itself, there's so much you could say about it.
Yeah, as you can tell, the inner work is a big deal for me in growing and running our business in a way that's going to feel really nourishing and luscious as well, and nourish our soul and as well as our bank account in some ways. In terms of like giving our audience a little more info about you and about growing business, like from your perspective, what has made the biggest impact in your own business growth? Like when you decided to shift from being in the back end of other people's businesses to actually opening your own business and helping people start and grow and expand in their own business, like what was the thing that made the biggest difference for you? Was it that clarity and that focus? Like I know you talked about like you two doing, like as all of us have, the running around, like piecemealing, like shiny object chasing the
it is the clarity and it is the focus. And I think what helped me to create that, and this sounds, because I am a business coach, but it was like hiring business coaches and working with business coaches myself.
So support.
So having, it's not even as much about the support. Yes, it's support. I mean, in the grand sense, but it's we all have our blind spots. And talking about the energetic stuff, like all of that energetic stuff is designed to protect us. It's put in place at the age of 4 or whatever age with good intention, with the aim of serving us in some way. But then we have these blind spots. We don't even realize that we're functioning this way, or that it's not working, or that there's another way that we could be approaching this. And so having somebody there who cares deeply, who has been on that path, who is a few steps ahead and can help you through and sees the potholes before you step in them, and helps you to get that clarity through the confusion, through the overwhelm, who can ask you questions, who can reflect back to you your own areas of brilliance, and that's something worth getting paid well for. I think that is the accelerator to getting the clarity that is then, that's how you get the clarity. It's how I've gotten the clarity, is by working with coaches. I've worked specifically with coaches around marketing and how do I tap into authenticity and bring that to my marketing and how I show up for people, and how do I get clarity on what do I even need to be doing, and where do I start, and what do I want to be doing? When I started with this round of business, I was so burnt out. I wanted nothing to do with business or starting a business, and it was so, I was in a really working with a really nurturing team of coaches, and it really was so inspiring. And it's powerful. So that would be my answer. Not just business coaches, but coaches in general.
Yeah, coaches in general. It's funny you say that. Like with regularity, I see how like you can try to figure something out on your own, and you get in a conversation even for 15-20 minutes. Like there's something about like two minds talking about a subject. It's almost like there's a third mind that shows up between the two of us, like the mastermind concept, where it's like suddenly it's like clarity evolves out of the conversation, and you can't have that on your own.
Yeah, well, I wonder if that, it's like you hear it differently from that. It's like it's like reflected, and you hear it how it lands in that other person's world, or like they say it in a particular way, and you're like, oh, like it just could be the same thing, but you just hear it in a different way. I think I don't know if that your experience is the same with that.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah, there's a brainstorming that happened where it's like the answer pops out at some point, like the clarity, the answer pops out in conversation. Sometimes it comes out of your own mouth. Sometimes it comes out of the coach's mind. I also think there's something here around permission. Like for me, being witnessed, like, and again, like, I don't know if it's because I work with so many people who are kind of purpose-driven and soulful and introverted, and I'm an introvert myself. There's something about being witnessed by another and being received by another, and our ideas or our process being received by another. Like it's almost the first step. It's like, I need you to receive it so that I can put it out there. And then it's a lot easier for it to be received out there. And then they give me permission. And that's something at first I needed. I needed another's permission to be myself, to show up as powerfully, to raise my rates. Now I've learned like to give myself permission. But at first it's like like a lot of our wounds are in community, they are with other beings. So like that healing often happens first with others as well. And for me, I agree, like having the right coach who could see me, who could call me out when I was hiding and playing small, who could help me step into that expansion and kind of anchor into that expansion and do my own nervous system work around that expansion was really powerful.
I think that's such an important like combination of things in a coaching or like relationship is or anyway, it's like having that like kindness and safety and trust, but also the accountability and somebody who can call you on things and challenge you. And as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, we're getting it to like my favorite. Like I just love to love on people. And if anybody, like I'm not a huge human design person, but I have a friend who does human design, and she was like, oh, I want to like look at your chart. And she, when somebody looks at something, like they get it on another level, that you're like, oh, okay. So she looks at my chart and she's like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And she's like, your job is like to love on people and to share love with people about like love of embodiment and love of living and and I was like, yeah, like I just want to love on people. And I love to, I have one client that I'm working with one-on-one right now, and she comes to a session. She's like, oh, I'm not sure I'm doing so well, and I'm doing this, and I'm like, no, that sounds brilliant, and that's like exactly where it's just, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that. And it's just that different perspective of the same exact situation, but we can be so hard on ourselves, and I think that's so normal. I wish it wasn't, but I think that that's just we tend to see things, and maybe not everybody, but a lot of it like in the worst light possible, in the harshest light possible, and having that other perspective of like, no, that's exactly where you need to be, or it's wonderful that you're doing that. And
I think this is like a really powerful thing that you're talking about. Like I've worked with a lot of coaches, and not all of them know how to love on you. And so, that sense of safety, it's safe to be me. It's safe to be here. It's safe to be seen. It's safe to have a big impact on the world. It's safe to ask for what I need and to allow myself to receive what I want. Like a lot of what we create as entrepreneurs is all wrapped up around feeling safe enough to show up boldly, to be different, to disrupt the status quo in some ways, to be seen in that brilliance. And that's not always easy. And so having the right mentor who is going to hold space for you and literally hold your confidence for you until you can really embody that confidence for yourself is extremely powerful. And that's always like the sense of like, do not work with a coach just because that coach is successful. Work with a coach because you feel really safe when you're in their presence, because that's when you're going to be able to show up as yourself, to really speak what's true for you, to have really deep, great conversations that are going to get you unstuck. If not, you're just going to put on that face. Like that's what I used to do when I worked with a coach where I couldn't feel safe. I put on that face. And of course that coach couldn't help me because I wasn't showing up in full authentic truth of what was going on.
Yeah, it's so important having that that trust relationship in a coach. I think it's so important. And thank you.
I can see that. I can see too from the little that I know you too. I could see that I love to love on people energy coming from you.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit the like, and this is also not true of all preschool teachers, but I just, I love
didn't think about that.
Similar, like,
yeah, that nurturing.
That, well, and it's not just that, it's like in the education system. So I kind of see a similarity between what I did or my vision in preschool teaching and in coaching. It's like everybody has their unique brilliance and their unique gifts and talents and abilities and what's super amazing and special about them. And I see their essence and their brilliance. And in kids, I could literally, like, this sounds so nuts, but like I could see a kid with their like parents and they're pushing the kid in the stroller, and there's this like moment of a glance where it's an acknowledgement of their being, and it sort of like solidifies it in who they are, where they get to be more of that. And so that's the energetics of it. But then they go to school and it gets just fucking destroyed, because it's like, do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher? Like those are the only or now it's like an engineer, right? Like there's like such a limited scope of what is considered acceptable. And it's like, well, what if you're a brilliant baker or an artist or a singer or an athlete or like a million other things, and that isn't acknowledged and nurtured and brought out in people? And it sort of goes back to that golden thread. But if it's like, that we all, if everybody got to show up as their brilliance and like the thing that brings them joy and that they're just amazing at, that they could contribute to others and get paid well for and live the life that they desire, whatever that looks like, whether it's owning a farm or a castle or living on an island or in the middle of a forest or on a boat, like whatever that looks like for you and your vision of the world, just how different the world would be. Like it just this beautiful tapestry of everybody getting to be their brilliance. And so whether it's teaching preschool or coaching adults, I just think, more people getting to be their brilliance. And
that's kind of what you do. Obviously, that loving on yourself is, again, I'm back to this concept of the power of permission. You get to be yourself, and it gets to be safe for you to be you, to be here, to share your gifts, to receive massively for the impact you were born to create on this planet.
Yeah. And not just safe, but celebrated.
Yeah.
Like just needed, celebrated.
Like indulge in it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have one last question in my list of questions, and then you can see if there's anything else you want to share. Maybe share a little bit about your program too, if you want. Sure. But from a perspective of really offering value, what do you think is working right now in marketing, in attracting clients, and what is, from your perspective, no longer really working and you're kind of telling your clients to stay away from?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this earlier. So forgive me for repeating, but I really do think it's building relationships, that authenticity, showing up genuinely.
So what you're saying, don't jump in somebody's DM and try to sell them right away.
I'll talk about that in a second.
I just unfriended 2 new contacts who did that to me. I'm like, are people still teaching me to do that? Like, what is going on?
I actually recently hired a VA, and that was what it was becoming. And I was like, oh my, like, this is horrible. Oh my God, this is the worst possible thing that could be happening. So yeah, no, it's just reinforced it. So it was really top of mind and really fresh for me that I'm like, this is so not me and my business, and this is never going to work. Yeah, I think presence, I think engagement, I think really genuine caring, genuinely providing value. And there's a way to do that. So you're not just giving away your services and yourself for free. But being interested and caring, and, there's just no substitute for that. So I think that's really important. Because, people are smart and people are tired of having rote copy and paste messages that don't make sense and clearly haven't been thought through. And like I said, guilty of having just dipped my toe in that pool and very quickly been like, oh no. And I want to just say too, like on the other side of that, like if you're like, oh, do what's true for you. But like, usually when I get a message from somebody and I'm like, oh, clearly whatever you just said is not accurate because you're just doing your job. Like there is a human on the other side of that. And so I do my best to be compassionate and responsive. And sometimes I'm in a mood and I don't want to respond at all, but just also remembering that person who's sending those copy and paste messages.
Yeah, they were taught to do that.
That's their job. They're doing their best. So that's just me bringing that little extra bit of, because I've had people just like lay in and it's like, okay, and not taking that personally either, but
yeah, I tend to not say anything in situations like that. I deflect, and if somebody just keeps like kind of not paying attention to boundaries, like including, I'll say like, hey, I've got like 3 different coaches. I'm good right now, but I'm happy to connect on, and be colleagues and connect. And somebody's like, oh, well, are you doing this? And like, they're still, and I'm like, okay, I
Yeah,
need a break.
I recommend just the most direct, like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Be direct, say what you want to say, but like, do a kindness.
And I actually think this method worked. Like 4 or 5 years ago, I think
Yeah.
people were less, like there was less of it, so it didn't feel quite as
But I think people just didn't know yet, like, that that's what was going on, and now it's, like, so rampant,
yeah.
and I do think there is a way of doing that that can work. I do believe that there is still a way of doing that that can work. I'm not recommending it. I'm not saying, like, but there is a way, like, just like anything, it goes back to that, like, knowing who you are, knowing what if your natural style is to DM people in this way and you're having the same conversation with people over and over again, and it's your system naturally, you can probably delegate that to somebody, just like any other system that you are doing repeatedly and genuinely. But to just hire somebody and be like, oh, just send people a message, like, it's not going to work.
It's also
So
about intention. Like that's what you're talking about too, is like, we're back to energy. Like, who are you being? Who is
right.
doing the strategy? What is your intention? Where's your heart is?
Yeah.
Where is your heart? Like all of that, the recipient in some ways, like, are you genuinely interested in and remembering that on the other side of this message is a human being?
Right.
Or are you forgetting that and this is just becoming like you're seeing people as a number? Then in that case, that's going to come through as well. I think like even in these DMs, there's a lot around intention and energy that does come through.
And that's what was happening with the person who was working for me was so focused on setting appointments and numbers, and even after me being like, it's more about the quality, it's about questions and asking and how can we support them, and she was just so like worried about there was so much anxiety. You talk about the nervous, like her nervous system was so wound that she couldn't hear it, and I was like, it's just not going to work. Like if there's no caring and there's no presence, like it's just not going to work. So yeah, so I would rather
So
reach
what you're
out.
saying is, don't do that. That doesn't work.
Don't do that.
And
Build real
build
relationships.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there's lots of ways of doing that too. It doesn't have to be, I mean, there's so many, there's so many ways of doing that. It's just finding your path. So yeah.
So is there anything else that's popping to your mind that you feel like would be helpful to people that we haven't covered? And if not, then tell us a little bit more. I know you're starting a new round of your program coming up. Like, tell us a little bit more about that, or what is the next step for people if they want to connect with you and they want to hear more about it.
Yeah. So first I want to offer a gift related to what we were just talking about. So if you are looking for a marketing method and strategy that works for you, that fits your skills, your talents, your abilities, your audience, it's inside my Facebook group. The Badass Business Babes will get the link for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called A Million Ways to Market. And so it's a downloadable PDF to sort through and get a little more clarity on what that method and strategy is for you, and how to start creating those relationships and reaching people in a more authentic and genuine and effective way. And so that touches on one of the building blocks that we go through in the Badass Boss Accelerator program, which is my 6-month group coaching program. It starts February 6th. We go through that money maximizer system, 1 month at a time, one building block at a time, and really optimizing, whether it's if you're just starting out in business and want to do it right from the beginning before you get stuck in bright, shiny object syndrome, or if you are in bright, shiny object syndrome or going through that or have just been through it and looking for something that's really going to hold you and take you through step by step to cut through and use all of those tools that you have in an effective way. That's what this program is really designed to do. And yeah, we just wrapped up one beautiful round, and I'm so excited to be starting another one with another group of amazing, brilliant,
and your program is intimate, because I've been in the programs where there's like 50, 80, 150 other humans in there, and it is hard to get like the kind of nurturing that you're talking about and the kind of support and guidance that you're talking about. My understanding is that your programs are intimate and people are not going to get lost in that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's intimate and it's high touch because it's so much. It's not about it's so much about the individual, not as much about the program. It's about the program, but it's really about the individual. And so, I really want to be able to support each person and make sure that they're getting the clarity that they're needing, and the loving and the empowerment. So yeah, it's a high touch, intimate program.
Beautiful. Yeah, you said something earlier, right towards the beginning. You were talking about those 6 different steps, and you were saying, like, if you're not getting the results you want, like there's something broken here. So I could see this program being great for somebody who's just starting out and wants to start and do it right, but also even somebody like who has been in business for a little bit and it's not working. One of your foundational pieces is off. Like it's either your offer, it's your messaging, it's your mindset and nervous system. Like there's something off. And so it sounds like your program, even for someone like that, like let's start over and do it right and really dial in each step so that your foundation is aligned.
Yeah, and for some people the trick is like they look at it and they go, oh yeah, well I've already got my niche and I've already got my messaging, and if it's like if it's not working, like you may need to backtrack, but that's like the boomerang, right? Like that's like the slingshot. That's like you may have to take a couple steps back, or dancing, a little waltzing, a little cha-cha. You may have to take a couple steps back, slow down, and get clarity. I also on myself, like recently, it was like, if you are overwhelmed, if you are feeling like, oh my God, I've got to do all this stuff, and like your nervous system is out of whack, you have to actually slow down. You have to take a step back. It's really counterintuitive and it can feel really hard in that moment. So same thing, if something is not working in your business, this is an assessment tool to fine tune, to clarify, like to figure out, first of all, where is the problem, and then how to adjust it, how to fix it, so that you never have that problem again, unless there's, through the evolution of your business and it's shifting and changing, but you'll know how to address it. So this is really designed for that sustainability, that scalability for the long term. Yeah,
That's great. That's great. I can definitely concur on that. There's the tweaking, and then there's the leveling up too. Like sometimes you need to go back to these foundation pieces because they're no longer in alignment with who you now are. And so that's why things are not working. And a lot of us who've done business, we're like, oh, I know my client avatar. I just upgraded my client avatar. And it took me it's like, really? I have to go back and redo this work? Yeah, because now I'm actually needing to speak to a different kind of person. My message needs to shift slightly. Like who I'm being and how I'm holding myself needs to shift. My offer needs to shift slightly because I'm no longer speaking to the exact same person I was speaking to 2 years ago or whatever it may be. So yeah, like foundation, like that's the stuff that never goes away. You can add all these sprinkles, you can do different things. The foundation, like you come back to it over and over. So what I'm going to do, if you're watching this, you want to connect with Adelle, in the description of this live, there's going to be all the links. There's going to be a link to her groups so that you can get that free gift. That sounds kind of amazing that she talked about. There's going to be a link to her program. And then like, where is the place to really get your content? Is it in your group, like where you go live and you give all the value, or like do you want people to friend request you? Like
I'm a very friendly person. You're more than welcome. My group is where I put my biggest and best stuff. I go live there once a week to share some business coaching, whatever's going on in my world. So that's probably the best place to start.
So you're going to find a link to the group. You're going to find a link to the program. And then whatever other link we will decide to put in there. This hasn't quite been decided right as we're speaking.
And if for anyone who's watching this, and if you're interested, if the Badass Boss program, the Badass Boss Business Accelerator sounds like something you'd like to know more about or have a conversation about, there is a way to sign up for a session with me, and we can talk further about that. And
when is it starting? Just so people know, like.
Yeah, it starts February 6th, so it's right around the corner. There's still time. There's still some space.
So in about 10 days. So people have got 10 days to watch this and to, like connect with you and to see if this is the right fit for them.
Yeah. So now is the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. We will, we'll do all of that. I'm so glad you came on. I felt like this was a really great conversation. And for those of you watching, I hope you got some real clarity and value here and there about growing your business and what's working and what's not working right now. And
thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. This was such a pleasure, and really grateful.
All right.